Welcome to this new automotive news video for Friday, July 3rd, 2026. Today we're going to talk about Alpine, which has just unveiled its very first electric A110, which is likely to strongly divide car enthusiasts, about Volkswagen, which wants to beat Renault on its own turf by revealing the prices of its new electric Polo, and about the story between Honda and Nissan, which is taking a rather ironic turn, and about Stellantis, which has just revived a brand that disappeared 30 years ago for a rather particular reason. These are today's topics. I hope you'll find them interesting. If that's the case, as usual, I count on you to show it by leaving a like on this video, subscribing for the next ones, boosting this one if the option appears for you, and of course, by leaving a comment where you share your opinion about today's news. The war of small electric cars may have just reached a new level. Until now, Renault seemed to have taken the lead with the Renault 5, but Volkswagen is finally striking back. The German manufacturer has announced that it will open orders for its new ID Polo trend, its entry-level version, starting from July 15, 2026. And the message is clear: to compete with Renault on its own turf. The battle starts with the price, since the Volkswagen ID Polo trend is listed from €24,995, which is €5 more than the Renault 5. Except that at this price, even though it has a slightly smaller battery than the Renault, 37 kilowatt-hours versus 40, the Volkswagen still claims a higher range, 329 kilometers compared to 310 for the little French car. Inside, both models offer large screens, but the German car scores another point with fast charging and direct current up to 90 kilowatts. And that's standard, whereas on the Renault 5, you only get 11 kilowatts of charging as standard, which makes long trips much more complicated with that one. Volkswagen also highlights a more spacious interior, both in the rear seats and in the trunk. And this push also continues with financing offers, since Volkswagen is announcing a long-term lease starting at €199 per month over 37 months with no down payment, for those who can benefit from the maximum CEE bonus of €5,170. Whereas with the Renault 5, the advertised monthly payments are lower, at €165 per month, but with an initial payment. An initial down payment of €5,300 with a real cost that comes to about €308 per month once this down payment is spread over the entire period. In the end, even though the Renault 5 keeps a more striking design, Volkswagen ultimately makes a strong impression by offering, for almost the same price, or even less with financing, better range, much faster charging, and more space inside. Renault and Volkswagen have officially begun their battle. Likely just the start. Alpine is taking a different approach now, aiming to win over enthusiasts instead of worrying about French buyers' budgets. Alpine has indeed just reached a historic milestone, because for the first time, the brand has officially unveiled the prototype of the future electric A110. It's called the A110 Future. It was shown through a few official pictures by Alpine, and it will be revealed in more detail during the Goodwood Festival in the coming days. Be careful here, we're not talking about a concept car, we're actually talking about what's called a mule, which means a car that's slightly camouflaged, but is very close to the version that we'll see on our roads as a production model. The least we can say is that, in terms of design, Alpine hasn't taken many risks. We really see the silhouette of the current A110, the A110 with a combustion engine, at least from the side, because from the front, you can tell it's going to be much wider than the current combustion model. If Alpine made this choice, it wasn't just for style, but also due to technical constraints. The whole car will be built on a brand new platform, called the Alpine Performance Platform, entirely developed in-house for this generation, with a clear goal: to prove that an electric sports car can keep the Alpine DNA. A presentation during which Alpine was able to provide some new technical information about it. We already knew it, but Alpine confirms that this platform will indeed be an 800-volt platform, which will allow for faster charging than 400-volt platforms. Among the new information, there's the battery solution, which is quite interesting, because here Alpine, unlike almost all other car manufacturers, didn't go for a big battery in the center of the car under the floor, as is almost always the case elsewhere, but instead, two separate batteries. One is placed on the front axle and the other on the rear axle. Why? Simply because this will allow for a very low driving position. Since batteries are usually placed under the floor in the middle, the car often needs to be raised, which you don't want in a sports car. But also because this setup allows for a weight distribution of 40% at the front and 60% at the rear. It's not as good as on the current A110, which has 44-56. The goal is to get closer to 50-50. We're targeting a more rear axle balance, which should make it slightly more oversteering than understeering. Philippe Krief, the head of Alpine, says that this architecture will offer about 550 kilometers of range, and that it will also allow for 3 full laps of the Nürburgring, the famous 20-kilometer German circuit, without the battery reducing power because of heat. Another interesting detail is that the rear battery is installed almost exactly where the current combustion engine is, which, according to Philippe Krief, still the head of the brand, could allow this platform to be converted to fit a combustion engine one day. This way, Alpine has an option if the electric A110 sells poorly, or if customers demand the combustion engine's return. He still insisted on one point, that from the start, Alpine designed this car to be fully electric, and the brand did everything to avoid degrading the performance of the electric version, while slightly modifying the vehicle as it was developed so that it could still accommodate a combustion engine. Under the hood, the future A110 will use 2 electric motors placed at the rear, paired with silicon carbide inverters. As for weight, Alpine also announced a rather ambitious goal, as it should weigh around 1,500 kilograms. That's a lot for an Alpine. It's 500 kilograms more than the current Alpine A110, but for an electric car, it's not that much. It's probably even a little below average. The fact that Alpine is already showing this prototype sends a strong message, as manufacturers rarely display development mules at prestigious events like the Goodwood Festival. It confirms that the launch of this electric A110 is really well underway, with a planned release that should be on schedule for 2027. So the real question is this: is Alpine betraying its DNA, or is it proving that an electric sports car can exist and deliver the same sensations? This is probably the biggest challenge in its entire history. And that's exactly what I'd like to hear your opinion about in the comments. What do you think of this first information? At Alpine, they're trying to preserve their DNA, while other manufacturers no longer really have that luxury. For some, the priority has now become survival. And that's exactly what's happening between Honda and Nissan. Now, this is a particularly interesting story. Remember, a few months ago, we were talking about how Nissan was in a huge financial mess, and they were looking for new partner manufacturers to work with to replace Renault in the Renault-Nissan alliance. At the time, they had gotten closer to Honda, and there was an agreement that was almost signed. But at the last moment, Nissan backed out, saying that Honda had tried to pull a fast one on them. And actually, in that agreement, Honda planned to absorb Nissan and basically turn it into a sort of subsidiary of Honda. Basically, Nissan would have become Honda, just under a different name. In the end, it's Honda who is now coming back to Nissan and asking for their help. The president of Honda confirmed that the discussions with Nissan were quite advanced, and that there would probably be an announcement in the next few days to simply make a new partnership official. A reversal that comes after a rather disastrous year for Honda, which recorded the first annual loss in its history, with a loss of 2 billion euros in 2025-2026. So now it's Honda coming back with its tail between its legs to Nissan, trying to win back its friendship. Nissan has largely accepted this, as Honda, Nissan, and Mitsubishi already have a concrete project to develop a shared electronic architecture. The 3 manufacturers would like to share their electronic control units, or ECUs, on some of their future hybrid and electric models, with a launch plan between 2029 and 2030. The goal is simple. Once this common technological base is in place, it will be much easier to share platforms, powertrains, or even purchases in order to reduce costs. Nissan and Honda's partnership seems less like one of conviction and more out of necessity. That's the irony. From history, the one who seemed able to move forward alone is now forced to return to the negotiating table. Faced with electrification and Chinese competition, some manufacturers are forming alliances to survive, while others are choosing to revive their old brands instead. No one expected to see this brand again one day, and yet Stellantis is going to resurrect Autobianchi, and that's 31 years after it disappeared. It's an Italian brand that officially disappeared in '95, but Stellantis still owns all the rights to it through the former FCA group. So why bring back a name that everyone had forgotten? The answer is quite surprising. In Italy, a law allows companies to recover the rights to a brand that has disappeared for more than 5 years if its owner no longer uses it. And this is where it gets very interesting, because some Chinese brands, especially BYD, which are trying to buy European brands, reportedly came forward to obtain from the Italian government the right to recover Autobianchi without Stellantis' consent, and to market cars in Europe under the name Autobianchi. To avoid losing this part of its heritage, Stellantis decided to react and chose to reuse the name Autobianchi at the last minute to prevent it from becoming Chinese. According to the first information we have on this subject, Fiat is preparing a special series of the Panda called Tributo Autobianchi. It would be based on the cross trim of the current Panda and might be sold only in Italy. So the goal is not really to relaunch Autobianchi as a separate brand, but simply to officially revive the brand in order to prevent a competitor from taking its name. In the end, it's quite ironic because Autobianchi isn't coming back to sell cars, but is coming back to avoid disappearing a second time. But for Italian car enthusiasts, seeing this name return after 31 years of absence is still a small event that few people would have expected. That's it. We've covered all the news for this Friday, July 3rd. Don't forget in the comments to tell me which day next week you'd like me to do my little live session. where we'll debrief together by talking a bit about the beginnings of the 2026 automotive year, seeing which news stories have impacted you the most, and where you think the auto industry is heading. Tell me in the comments which day you prefer, like the video, subscribe for more, and consider joining as a supporter. See you tomorrow for the weekend's first video. Ciao.